Joining us now, Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor, Michael Meehan, a Democratic strategist who served as the senior communications advisor to the Kerry campaign in '04, and Kristen Soltis Anderson, a Republican pollster and columnist at the Washington Times. Welcome to all of you. We have, we're going to show in a moment some of the most recent poll numbers, but you know, there's sort of something you can overlay on this Georgia race to try to get a feel for what's going on out there. Kristen, what do you take? What's your take?
Well, certainly you have a Democratic candidate who has a Democratic base that is very hungry for a win. They are looking for some shred of good news in a post-Trump election landscape where things have looked pretty bleak for Democrats. But the problem here is that a lot of the support coming in for this Democratic candidate has come from out of state. And so I think the big question is, just because Democrats have poured a lot of effort into this race, if they're successful, does that actually spell bad news for Donald Trump and Republicans long term? I'm not so sure. Typically, people read into these elections exactly what they want to see. If the result confirms what you believe about the national political environment, then you read tons into it. You say it's a huge deal. But if it doesn't, then you usually say, well, these special elections don't mean anything. They're kind of odd. And so I expect people to break down into those camps when interpreting the results tonight. All
right. Chris, you wrote a great piece today, this afternoon, pointing out some of the dynamics here. You basically say, you know, it's getting weird when you see this kind of money flowing into this kind of race.
Well, look. This is, yes, it is a proxy war between Democrats and Republicans, between President Trump and Democrats who are trying to get their act together. Unfortunately, I think there's quite a lot to what Kristen had to say when it comes to Democrats have raised the bar here. This is, for themselves, this is a district Republicans should win. Period. This is a heavily Republican district. And if Jon Ossoff does not nail it, if he does not hit a grand slam home run tonight, beat expectations in the polls, and get to 50% plus one vote, he's going to lose in every likelihood this summer. So the Democrats have taken a race where they were doing surprisingly well, where intensity was high, and they've taken that and turned it into something where if they don't shoot the lights out, if they do not have a massive victory tonight, then it looks like a defeat. And that's weird.
So, Michael, this was a race that was inside 2% when President Trump won the state of Georgia. It's a state that many Democrats feel there's some room to grow in for Democrats. And you look at the moderate voter who perhaps was one of those late deciders who ended up putting President Trump over the edge. And they're looking at things like tax reform, health care reform. They haven't seen those things happen yet. And, you know, they may be thinking that this is somebody that might get somewhere with those things.
Well, look, let's be clear. Congressman Price won the seat by 24 points just 5 months ago. The Kansas House race that was decided was 20 points less. If the Democrats continue to shave 20 points off of ruby red House seats, there's going to be a very different outcome in 2018. I agree with some of the assessment that my colleagues on the panel have here, but the fact of the matter is this is a 30-year-old guy who's never run for office before, and he's on the verge of being close to the 50% threshold in a district that a millennial wasn't even born yet the last time a Democrat won. So let's be clear, the fact that this guy's even in the race at this point is quite an accomplishment already. And as Democrats look to get candidates to run next cycle, if you can show where they don't spend a dime in Kansas and then this neophyte comes and gets 40, 45, maybe 50% of the vote, you're going to have a lot easier time recruiting other people to run next time. So I actually think that the Democrats have already won tonight, regardless of whether Ossoff gets to 50 or not.